Warren Buffett has been investing since he was 10 years old. He's in his 90s now, and he handed over the chief executive job at Berkshire at the start of this year. And more than 9/10 of his fortune arrived after his 65th birthday, not after his best trade, after 65. That's the famous lesson from chapter 4 of The Psychology of Money. And it's true. Time is the most powerful force in money. But that chapter only ever looks one way. It looks at compounding working for you. Nobody tells you it runs in reverse. And in reverse, it runs at least twice as fast. The market has returned around 7% a year over the long run. The average credit card carrying a balance in America right now charges 22.15%. Same mechanism, same maths, several times the speed, and pointed at you. In about 4 minutes, I'll show you two versions of the same person, same salary, same discipline, 3 years apart. And the one who did what everybody recommends ends up $2,200 behind. Berkshire has compounded at roughly 20% a year since he took it over. That's excellent, and it isn't magic. Fund managers have beaten it. What almost nobody has is the second number, 80 years. He started at 10. He had about $1 million by 30. Then he simply did not stop, through every crash, for another 60 years. Morgan Housel put a number on how lopsided that is. On his accounting, of the $84.5 billion Buffett was worth when the book was written, $81.5 billion arrived after he turned 65. And Housel runs the counterfactual that settles it. Same brain, same returns every year, but he starts at 30 with $25,000 and retires at 60 like a normal person. That Warren Buffett is worth about $12 million instead of tens of billions. 99.9% less, with nothing removed except years. So when people say Buffett proves you should invest early, they're right, and I'm not going to argue with it. I'm going to argue with applying it without checking one number first, and that number is on your credit card statement. Compounding isn't a reward system. It has no opinion about you. It's a mechanism, and it's worth seeing on numbers small enough to hold in your head. Put $100 in at 7%. A year later, it's 107, and the year after, the 7% lands on the 107, not the 100. That's the whole trick, not the rate. The fact that the rate keeps landing on a bigger number. Now owe $100 at 22.15. A year later, you owe 122. And from then on, the 22% lands on the 122. Same trick, same machine, your name on the other side of it. And here's what should bother you. The two rates aren't the same kind of thing. Your 7% is a long-run historical average. It isn't promised. Some years it's 20, some years it's minus 30. Somebody who bought the American market in the year 2000 and held it for the whole decade finished slightly behind where they started. The 22.15 isn't an average of anything. It's a contract. It happens every month in every economy, whether you're employed or not. One number is a hope. The other is a certainty. And the certainty is the bigger one. And before somebody puts it in the comments, yes, those two aren't measured the same way. The 7 is after inflation, the 22 isn't. So do it properly. Strip inflation out of both, and it's about 19% against your 7. Leave it in both, and it's roughly 22 against 10. Run it whichever way you like. The gap narrows, it never closes, and it lands somewhere between 2 and 3 times, always pointing the same direction. $10,000 invested at 7%. After 10 years, if the long-run average holds, you have $19,672. You've almost doubled it, and it took a decade. $10,000 of card debt at the same card rate, paying nothing. After 10 years, it's $73,949. $19,000 against $74,000. Same starting amount, same decade, same mechanism. One grew by 9,000 and the other by 64. Money at 7% takes about 10 years to double. Money at 22.15 takes about 3.5. In the time your investment doubles once, the debt has doubled roughly 3 times. Nobody actually pays nothing for 10 years, so that's a demonstration of direction and speed rather than a forecast. The realistic version is next, and it's far more common. Sarah is 28. She has $6,000 on a card at 22.15% and $500 a month spare after everything else is paid. She's just watched a video about Buffett. She knows starting 10 years early beats any stock she'll ever pick, and she doesn't want to waste 3 years. Version 1. She invests immediately and pays the card minimum, 2% of the balance. That's the mainstream advice, and it feels responsible. 3 years later, her investment account holds $15,239. That's real, and it feels fantastic. She also still owes $5,601. After 3 years of paying every single month, the balance has moved about $400. If that sounds impossible, here's the arithmetic of a minimum payment, which almost nobody has actually done. $6,000 at 22.15 generates $110.75 of interest a month. Her minimum payment, 2% of the balance, is $120. So she pays $120. $110 of it is interest. $9.25 comes off what she owes. The minimum payment isn't a payment plan, it's a subscription, priced to cover the interest and almost nothing else. Over 3 years, she's handed the bank $3,857, and the debt is still there. Net position, $9,638. Version 2. Same Sarah, same $500 a month, all of it at the card, investing nothing. The card is gone in 14 months for $846 of interest instead of $3,800. Then she invests the full $500 for the remaining 22 months. At the same 3-year mark, she has $11,876 and owes nobody anything. $2,238 ahead, having started investing more than a year later. Run them to 10 years, and version 1 has $62,600 net after paying $11,800 in interest. Version 2 has $73,357 and paid $846 once. The gap went from $2,200 at 3 years to $10,700 at 10. The mistake compounds too. That's this entire video in one line. The interesting question isn't which version won, it's why version 1 feels better while it's happening. Sarah's investment account is an app she opens on purpose. It's green, it goes up, it congratulates her. $15,000 is a real thing she can look at. The debt is a different app, and she opens it to pay, not to read. The balance barely moves, so there's nothing to notice. 3 years of progress on one screen, 3 years of nothing on another, and no screen anywhere that subtracts one from the other. That isn't a discipline problem. She saved, she invested, she never missed a payment. She just measured the half of her balance sheet that was pointing the right way. So why is the standard advice wrong here? It isn't stupid. It's advice with a missing condition. Investing early is powerful because of the gap between your return and doing nothing. 7% against 0 is enormous over 40 years. But if you're carrying a balance at 22.15, your alternative isn't 0. Your alternative is 22.15. Paying that card off isn't the boring option. It's an investment, and it returns 22%, guaranteed, because the charge stops the moment the balance does. Immediate, with no 40-year wait. No volatility, no bad decade. And in most places, untaxed, because you're removing a cost rather than earning income. A guaranteed, instant, tax-free 22%. No fund on earth sells that. Buffett has never had a year that clean, so investing while carrying that balance isn't investing. It's borrowing at 22 to earn 7 and hoping it works out. Written down like that, nobody would choose it. The only reason it happens is that the borrowing already existed, so it doesn't feel like a decision. Which gives you an order of operations. 3 steps in this order for mathematical reasons rather than moral ones. First, take any employer match. If they add 50 cents per dollar, that's an instant 50% before the market does anything. Nothing beats it, including the card. Second, destroy every debt above about 10%. Cards, overdrafts, anything with a rate starting with a 2. This is the step people skip, and it pays the highest guaranteed return in your financial life. Third, invest and never stop. From here, the Buffett lesson takes over completely, and the only thing that matters is not interrupting it. At every stage, you're just taking the highest certain return available. 50 beats 22, 22 beats 7, and 7, uninterrupted for 40 years, beats almost everything people spend their lives chasing. And it cuts both ways, which is the part nobody says out loud. There is a debt you should deliberately not pay off early, because clearing it costs you money. A mortgage at 4% or a student loan at 5. 4 guaranteed against 7 expected. The expected one is higher, and 3 points isn't enough to pay for the certainty. So you keep the cheap debt and you invest. Roughly, under 6%, invest. Over 10, clear it first, every time. In between, it's a genuine judgment call, so pick the answer that lets you sleep. The rule was never that debt is bad. It's that you take the highest certain return available. 4 things. The first takes 10 minutes. Open every account and write 2 columns, what you own and what you owe, with the interest rate next to every debt. Most people have never seen those numbers on the same page, and the rates are usually worse than they remember. Then find everything above 10% and put every spare dollar at the highest rate first. Not evenly across all of them. Highest rate, in full, then the next one. Keep a small buffer while you do it, 1,000 or so one bad week doesn't put the balance straight back on the card. Clearing debt without a buffer is how people end up doing this twice. And the day the last high-interest balance hits 0, redirect that whole payment into investing. Not next month, the same day, before your life expands to absorb it. You already proved you can live without that $500 a month. You were paying it to a bank. Now pay it to yourself for the next 40 years. More than 9/10 of Warren Buffett's fortune arrived after he turned 65. Everybody hears the same instruction in that. Start early. But it only says half of what it says. It says a rate applied to a balance without interruption for a very long time produces a result that looks impossible from the beginning. It never specified which direction the balance was pointing. Buffett spent 80 years on the right side of that sentence. A 22% balance puts you on the wrong side of the identical sentence, running 2 to 3 times faster. Compounding isn't a reward for being good with money. It's a multiplier on whatever position you're already in. So before you copy the man's method, check which way your own compounding points. If it's pointing at you, that's the thing to fix. And fixing it pays better than any investment you'll be offered this year. Then start the 80 years.